Hi there, I'm Mike Hinkson, and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. Randi-Lee Bowslaugh is our guest today, and she is going to talk about her life and her stories. She has a lot to discuss regarding mental health and other similar things. And we, in talking about mental health, won't even begin to talk about Washington because Washington, D.C., we're not sure how healthy any of them are down there. They're fun to pick on anyway. Mark Twain did it. Will Rogers did it. So why can't we, right? Anyway, Randi, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Well, if you would, why don't you start by telling us a little about your life, kind of your younger years and all that, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, way back in 1987.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Exactly. Well, it feels like that, right? So I'm in Canada. So it is a galaxy far, far away.
Not much.
So I mean, as a small child, it was pretty good. Life was good. But when I was about 14, that's when it happened. That's when I had my first bout with depression. At the time, I didn't know what to call it because, I mean, I just thought that everybody felt the same way at that age because why not? It's normal to me. And it wasn't until I became an adult and then looked back and went, oh, yeah, I was depressed. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, that was my first time with it. High school was horrible. I skipped most days, which actually now there's a term for that. It's not skipping. I mean, it is skipping, but it was school refusal, which I say that because school refusal isn't just the I don't want to go to school because I just don't want to go to school. School refusal is more to do with I don't want to go to school because there is an underlying reason. So mine was that I was depressed and that going to school made me more depressed and I didn't have really any friends there and I just felt very out of place and it was an awful time. So it wasn't that I wanted to skip just to go hang out with my friends. In fact, most days I just stayed home. So yeah, I don't know how much more you want me to go into that early childhood times.
Well, whatever you think is necessary. Well, let me ask you this, sort of an overarching question. Do you have, or is there any real way to know what caused the whole issue of depression for you?
That is a great question, actually. So I can't say for certain, but there was a lot of various factors going on at the time. So my mom and dad had never been together from what I can remember. I used to go to my dad's every other weekend. And he wasn't necessarily a bad dad, but he also wasn't a good dad. So I didn't really feel any real connection with him. And so around that time, I also stopped going to see him. At that point, I was only going there because my sisters lived there as well. But because we have the same dad, different moms, me and my sisters. But then when my dad and their mom broke up, I had no reason to see him. So I stopped going. So that was one factor. And then the other couple bigger factors were, puberty.
There is that.
There is that. But my mom's ex-husband, so my mom got married after grade 8. So I would have been 13. Which is just before I realized I had depression. And he turned out to be an alcoholic. And he was very verbally abusive. And you never knew when you walked in the door, you never knew if you were going to get the good version of him, the sober, nice version of him, or if you were going to get the yelling, screaming, I need to go hide in my room version. And then you layer on top of that, my brother was in and out of jail at the time. My brother was getting into more and more drugs at the time. And so my mom had to focus a lot of her attention on him, on what he needed, which as a parent, I'm like, oh, I get that now. As a kid, I was like, what am I? Am I chopped liver now? What's going on here? I didn't understand why all of a sudden my mom, who when I grew up, right when I was smaller child, I was very close to my mom. And I'm very close to my mom again now as an adult. But as a teenager, I thought that I was kind of the forgotten child, which, it doesn't help your mental state. And then I just didn't feel like I fit into high school. I felt always a little bit different than everybody else, and I didn't know why. And so all of those different layers, one on top of the other, just, compiled into hating myself.
It was a spiral.
It was. Yeah.
So what did you do about all of that? Or how do you deal with that?
As a teenager, I definitely had some very bad thoughts, some very ill-conceived notions of what I should do, but I didn't do them. What I did as a teenager, actually, is I wrote poetry. So that was my first coping strategy. It was my thing that kind of got me through being a teenager. Without that, I don't think I would have survived. So there was that. I also went to my youth group at church, and that's the only place that I really felt worthy, that I felt like I fit in, that people didn't look at me like I was a weirdo. And then animals, my pets. Pets are such good therapy things. I used to, when my stepdad would be yelling and screaming and I would be hiding in my room, I had 2 cats at the time, Diamond and Tigger. And so I'd take them and I would just go hide in my room with them. So that was the coping at the time. It worked out well. And actually that's what got me into writing. That's what I turned my first book into, was those poems that I wrote.
Well, with Diamond and Tigger, what did they do, or how did they help you? I agree with you that pets and animals really do help us a lot in so many different ways. But for you, what was kind of the personal connection? How did they help?
They would cuddle. They were very cuddly kitties, and purring. I loved the purring, and they would lay on me and I would pet them and just tell them all my secrets, because they couldn't tell anybody else. Nobody was listening to their meows.
And they probably wouldn't tell anybody else anyway.
No, they probably wouldn't. And so they were my little babies.
So kind of the connection is that they were there. They accepted you for who you were, no matter what, which is something that we just don't find with a lot of people. They don't deal with difference very well.
It's so true. Yes.
So you cuddled with them and you got through it. So when did you eventually graduate from high school? How did that all work out?
I graduated when I was 17, because my mom's rule when I was skipping classes was I needed to know where you were. So I just stayed home, and you couldn't fail anything. So I didn't. I passed. Very poor marks, but I passed. So I graduated then. I had applied to colleges and universities. I'd gotten into them, but I wasn't emotionally ready to go at the time. I was still very much depressed, didn't know how I would be able to go far away from home to do that. So I took a year off. I got pregnant. And then I met my now husband, and he was like, I'm going to college in September. If you go, then I'll drive you, because we didn't live far from each other. He was like, I'll pick you up, I'll drive you. So, okay, cool. So I ended up going to Niagara College after taking a year off. And then by the time I started at the college, my baby was almost a year old, because he was born at the end of October. And college was awesome. College was amazing. I am definitely not in the field anymore that I went to school for, but I loved the experience of college. I was on student council. I got the top marks in my classes because I got to pick the classes that interested me, which was all psychology. I met real people. Like in high school, it felt like people were all like, you're trying to find yourself, right? In high school, you don't know who you are. And a lot of people fake it, I feel like, at least in my high school. But at college, people were more real. People were adulting because they had to adult. I met a lot of the other people that also had kids there, because I connected with the people that had the same sort of life as I did, right? Being a parent going to college. So that was amazing. My depression kind of took a back seat during that time, which was awesome. But then, and I did graduate twice from 2 different programs, actually. My dog is barking. I did most of my university. I was paying for that out of pocket though. So I ended up not getting my bachelor's degree because by the time I only have like a semester left too, but whatever. I was like, I don't want to work in this field anymore. So I'm going to not pay for school anymore. It doesn't make sense to waste all my money. So I stopped. But I did work as an employment counselor for almost 6 years between the 2 places that I worked. But during that time, that's when depression decided to come back. So again, for me, it was an accumulation of many stressors. So at that time, I mean, social services, at least in Ontario where I live, we have a very high turnover rate for social services because it's a really hard job to do. You get people coming in and you have to listen to all of their life troubles and things. And it wasn't that I had an issue doing that, but compiling that onto going home and not knowing how to help my kid. So at that time, my kid was having a lot of issues at school. He was bullied a lot, kindergarten through grade 1. He was having a lot of meltdowns. So by the time he was in grade 3, I was just so drained. I didn't know what to do. We didn't know why he was the way he was at the time. We were trying to find answers, and it was a lot. And so something had to give. And at that time, I took time off of work. I got a doctor's note. I took time off of work. I went to a therapist because I had made a plan of how I was going to drive myself off of a bridge and just not be here anymore. So that was good times. We did end up finding out that my child does have autism. So once he was finally diagnosed, we were able to get him the right help. He is now doing fabulously. He is now 15. He's doing fabulously. And therapy worked well for me. Medication worked well for me. And I am doing mostly fabulously too.
So you yourself, if I recall, were diagnosed as having some autism. Is that correct?
Yes. So last year, I finally figured out. Remember how I was saying in high school, I always felt different, felt like, people looked at me like I was the weirdo. Turns out I have autism. And once I found that out last year, I'm like, oh my goodness, my whole life makes sense now. And I only did it because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to know why I always felt different. Why, when other people got a joke, I had no idea what the joke was about, why other people could be in a situation and show certain emotions. And I'm like, I don't get it. Why are we all upset right now? It just doesn't make sense. I just wanted to know why. And so when I finally got my diagnosis last year, I'm like, oh, everything makes sense.
How did that come about? You weren't looking to be diagnosed as having autism. So how did that all work out?
So I was bothering my kid in the one day, and parents, we like to bother a kid. So I was doing a weird random dance to bother him, and he looked at me and he goes, "Mom, if I have autism, I got it from you." And I go, maybe you did. And I started thinking about all the times when people would say whatever about Levin, I go, he's just like his mom. It's fine. He's just like his mom. And I'm like, wait a minute. If he is just like his mom, maybe I do have it. And so that's kind of when I was like, let's go find out. And there we are.
So you have autism. You have a child with autism. Is that your only child?
The only one I birthed. I do have a stepdaughter and a grandbaby.
There you go.
Yeah.
So does grandma spoil granddaughter?
It's a grandson.
Grandson.
And I spoil him so much.
Okay. It's part of the rule.
It is. It is so part of the rules. And grandma's his favorite. So it's fine.
Well, if you're going to be a grandma, you got to spoil grandkids. It's a rule.
Oh, yeah. I spoil him so much. Whenever he's over, we're nonstop playing toys, always Paw Patrols. Gotta do Paw Patrols. He's only 2. And he loves ice cream and popsicles, but he also likes bananas and apples too. So he has a nice combination with the junk food and the good food.
Well, cool. So when did you really start writing professionally or seriously? You talked earlier about writing your poems into a book, and when did that get published?
I published that in 2017.
Okay.
And that kind of gave me the author itch. And I'm like, this is fun. I want to do it again. So I published my next book in 2018. I did have to take a little bit of time off because that was around the time that my son was, for lack of a better term, going crazy. And I also had gotten diagnosed with cancer. So that was, I had some stuff to deal with at the time. But since then, since 2020, I have released a whole bunch more books. I got into kids' books, into some scary stuff, because before that, it was all about the nonfiction, which I still write. I love my nonfiction, love mental health. I have to talk about it. But sometimes it's fun to write kids' books and scary stuff too.
Well, tell me a little bit about some of the discussions of mental health that you've put into books. Tell me about some of your nonfiction, if you would.
Sure. So the biggest topic that I talk about is depression, because that is my personal experience. So in, like I said, the first book, Thoughts of a Wanderer, that's poetry. And I'm actually going to be revamping that and re-releasing it now that when you do something, the first time you do it, it's never as good as the 20th time you do it. So I'm going to revamp that book, because it's a good book, but it could be better. I'm going to be re-releasing.
But now you also have a lot more understanding of why you wrote what you wrote when you were creating those poems.
Exactly. So I want to re-release it. There's going to be some new poems added to it when I do re-release it, and it's just going to be a nice, fresh kind of book, fresh eyes on it. And then the other one that I wrote about depression, it's an actual book. It's not poetry. I put poems in it because I love poems, but it's a book, and it goes through more the coping strategies that I've learned over the course of my life, so that other people might be able to pick and choose some of the things that might work for them. And then at the end of that book, there's worksheets people can use so that correspond with every chapter of the book. So each chapter talks about something specific. So it might be therapy, it might be writing a letter to yourself, whatever it is, there's a corresponding worksheet that people can use so that you can actually implement things right away. And that was actually it's my only book right now, but that was my first one I put on Audible. So people can get an audio version of that one, and I'm the one reading it. So it's fun.
What's the title of it?
Embracing Me.
Okay.
And then the other nonfiction that's published right now, it's called A Mother's Truth. And that's about raising my kid with autism and what it was. It's from conception. Like, it starts right when I was pregnant, up until grade 6, I think it was. And we're currently living what will become part 2, because eventually I'll release the teenage years version of that. And that one was co-authored with my best friend, who her son is very similar. He wasn't diagnosed with autism, but he has very similar issues, and he does have extreme anxiety. So it's both of our stories in that book. And again, worksheets, we love worksheets. There's some in there, that things that we learned as we went to a million doctor's appointments, what doctors are asking from us. So those worksheets are in there so parents can already be prepared for them before the appointment. And then what I'm working on right now is another nonfiction. So this will be my 4th nonfiction coming out. And this one's very emotional. I'm not an emotional person, but this one's got me very emotional. So last year, my brother died from a drug overdose. And so he always, as much as he did have an addiction, he always still wanted to help people. And so I'm taking some of his story. I don't know all of his story because I'm the little sister, but I'm taking what I do know about his story and about addictions and about coping strategies, and I'm putting it into a book right now. I'm on the 2nd draft of it, so it's coming, and hoping that will help other families who are going through kind of something similar. And hopefully maybe they don't have to go through the funeral part of it, but at least they'll have some information ahead of time.
So I'm a little curious. How did you get one of your books, and is it the only one, but how did you get your book into Audible? How did all that work out, or did you make that happen?
It's actually a pretty easy process if you are technically savvy. So I had to get some help on that end of things. But you go through ACX is like the Audible platform that you upload it all to. And so you can either find your own narrator, and there are people on like Fiverr or like on the ACX website, or me, I will do it too because I love narrating. Anyways, I thought my story, I'm gonna narrate my own book, and I love talking clearly. But so I recorded everything. I went through and I edited out all of the mistakes, and then I sent it to somebody who adjusted the sound volume on it because it has certain standards that it has to actually meet in order to be able to be uploaded to ACX. And all of that requirements is on the ACX website. So I sent him all of those. He sent them all back to me with the right qualities. I just put them all in, and it all has to be by chapters. You can't just put in one big long thing. If you have chapters, it has to be done by chapters. And then it gets uploaded. They approve it, or they'll come back and say, hey, whatever. With my book, because there are those worksheets, you actually get a PDF copy of the worksheets, which was pretty cool as well. I didn't even know that was something you could get, but they emailed me back and said, hey, after reviewing your submission, it looks like there's worksheets in your book. Can we have them? And they can actually put PDFs as an attachment when somebody buys your book. So that was pretty cool.
Cool. Does it cost you to do that?
No, as the author, it does not cost you anything to put it up there. Now, if you are getting people to narrate it for you or do the sound quality, that's separate, right? Like you would have to pay them.
But that's not an Audible charge. That's not an Audible charge.
No, from an Audible standpoint, you are not charged. It's very much like if you publish on Amazon, if you're on the KDP publishing, if you do it self, it doesn't cost you anything up front. They just take a percentage and then they give you your royalty as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to a number of people who have thought about doing audiobooks, and I have suggested that they explore Audible, but never knew exactly what the process was. So I appreciate you telling us that. And
yeah, it took a lot of research.
Well, maybe other authors who are listening will find it now more relevant to go ahead and put their books into Audible.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me, guys. I'm here. I'll tell you what I did.
And your contact information is going to be in the notes, and we'll get to you giving some of that a little bit later on. But tell me about your children's books, if you will.
Yeah, so I have a couple of them. My first one was called Diamond the Cat. If you recall, Diamond was my cat. And so I had her for 19 years before she passed away, and I cried uncontrollably. So I wanted to make a kid's book about her, and it's for like the younger group because it's the first page is I am a cat. I lay on a mat. So it's all rhyming and cute little pictures. It's all cartoon pictures of Diamond. And at the very last page where it says the end, there's a collage of all the real life pictures of Diamond. So you can see the real life kitty. I love her. And I always used to say a diamond is a girl's best friend because my cat was a diamond.
There you are.
And then I also have Woofy. So Woofy he's going to have multiple books. If my kid will ever finish drawing the pictures. my kid is the illustrator for the Woofy books. And so the Woofy book that's out right now, it's called Woofy's Trip to the Hospital. And so he is a little stuffed dog that lives in a classroom with kids, and he goes home with different kids every week so he can have lots of adventures. And in this adventure, he goes with one of the boys to the hospital to get his tonsils removed. And so Woofy helps him be very brave during it. And so it's not rhyming. It's a little bit for a little bit older than the Diamond the Cat book. And there will be more Woofy books. I have another Woofy book written, but my kid has not drawn the pictures yet. And then I also have a kid's Christmas book, which was actually the the first kids book that I did, I know it's not Christmas time, but it's called Operation Christmas. And it's about a little girl who can't fall asleep. And so magic has to happen. I don't want to give the whole book away, but magic has to happen. And so Santa can still come even though she won't fall asleep. And that was actually based on a real life experience where Santa had to come into my basement because my kid would not sleep. And then I've started a learn to read series for early readers where they draw their own pictures for the book. So they're very simple stories. So it's like, this is a cat, and then they would draw a cat. This is a bat, and then they would draw the bat. So they get to draw along their own picture with that. And then the final series. Oh, yep.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the final series that I have is I've gotten 3 social stories. And so social stories are usually used for kids with autism. Things that I wish as a parent I had when my kid was younger. And it's cleaning up your toys, going to the bathroom, and conversations. It just teaches a very specific skill in very simplistic terms and step by step.
So you have a diamond book, but you don't have a Tigger book.
Not yet, but I will in the future.
We certainly
My mom has already said that.
We don't want to leave Tigger out.
No. I cannot leave my Tigger out. He was my first kitty. And he was around 18 or 19 too by the time he passed away, I think too.
Mm.
But,
how do you come up with your ideas?
Well, the nonfiction's really easy because it's just my life. But the other ones, the not nonfiction ones, come up with just like random things in life. So even though the kids' books are they're not necessarily real life, they stemmed from real life, right? Like I was saying, the Christmas book was something that happened. Diamond was a cat I actually had. The first Whoopi book was actually an idea from my aunt because her son had tonsil surgery before. But the scary stories don't have any kind of part of real life, let's say, because everything is monsters with me and scary stories. So it's called A Little Scary. It's a collection of 10 short scary stories. I will be coming out with another one eventually. I already have a list of a whole bunch of other scary stories. And those ones just come from like completely random ideas. Like the one story, I was walking down the street. I was walking my dogs. I have 2 dogs. And well, now I have 3 dogs, actually. At the time, I had 2. So I was walking my 3 dogs and I saw this tree. And this tree looked like it had like a face in it. And then one of the stories just popped into my head. And I wrote a whole short, scary story about nature and how nature can sometimes do some payback if we don't take care of it.
So when you get ideas, do you just immediately write them down, or how do you make sure you don't forget them?
I usually, if I'm at home, I will write them down on my whiteboard. If I'm out, I text them to myself.
So you get them down and they'll come out at some point.
Exactly. Yeah. If I don't write them down, you're right, I would totally forget them. But so in some way, they have to get written down, whether it's a text to myself or actually written down, they have to get written down.
It is nice that today we have a lot of different technological ways to get information written down so we don't forget it. I, for example, use my Amazon Echo a lot to remind me of things, even though I might have something on a calendar. If I'm not right in front of the computer, I won't see the calendar. So I use technology to remind me all over the house, as well as writing down ideas and doing other sorts of things. So yeah, we do live in a wonderful era where it's a lot easier to get ideas down where we can go back and then address them later.
Yeah, exactly. It's very nice.
So for you, writing about your life and so on, well, because you happen to be able to write, it does turn out to be fairly easy for you. But this whole concept of mental health and being a person with mental health issues has a lot of stigmas about it, and it's something that we don't understand. How do we start to deal with that, and how do we change people's perceptions of that?
We talk. We talk a lot. That's a really simple answer. But really, it comes down to being able to be open with other people, because since there is so much stigma around it, it often shuts us up. We don't want to talk about it because we don't want people to look at us like we're weird, like we're crazy, like we're whatever. But the bottom line is we're people like anybody else, no matter what your mental health is, whether it's depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, it doesn't matter. You're just a person who maybe our brain chemistry is a little bit off. Like for me, I take my antidepressants every day. I went off of them. It didn't go so well, so I'm back on them. But that's because my brain chemistry is a little bit off, and I need that extra little help, which is totally fine. But people don't want to talk about it. And my husband put it best to me. So when he found out that I had went off of my antidepressants, because I didn't tell him or the doctor or anything, I just did it. I do not recommend, please don't do this. But when he found that out, and my husband is type 1 diabetic, which means he has an insulin problem. So he says to me, well, do you want me to stop taking my insulin? I said, no, I don't want you to die. He goes, exactly. I don't want you to die either. Why would you do that? I was like, oh, sorry, honey. I love you. So we have to start looking at mental health the same way we look at physical health. And that is that sometimes we need help, and that's okay. Recently, I've been dealing with a lot of chronic pain, and I've realized that has a lot of stigma around it as well. And actually on Monday, I was just at the pain clinic, and I had a complete breakdown with the doctor. And I am not an emotional person. I am not a crier, but I was crying so much in his office. Not just because I was in immense pain, but because I was so frustrated about the lack of help around it and the lack of not knowing what's happening. And that all I just kept being told is, oh, you're too young for this. That's great that I'm too young for this. I'm in my 30s, but I'm still in such pain that I have had to change my life. I can no longer do kickboxing right now. I can no longer take my dogs for a 45-minute walk. They're lucky if I can get around 2 blocks before I have to lay down. And so I was just totally crying in his office and so emotionally spent that our mental health and our physical health are very much interrelated. And so we need to talk about both of them in the same way and give both of them the same kind of respect as like one and the other.
So I think that you raised some valid and very good points. The reality is, maybe this is an oversimplification, but talking and dealing with the so-called stigma of mental health issues is in a lot of ways not really much different than talking about having or being a person who happens to have a disability, because it's all about being different and people not wanting to deal with difference, no matter what we say about diversity.
It. That is 100% what it is differences are scary. If you're different, you're scary.
Well, why is that?
That's a great question that I don't have a scientific answer for, but I'll tell you what I think on it. So I think it's just because the unknown is very scary. And I just wrote an article for a magazine. I don't think it's published yet, but about, and this goes back to writing scary stories, but it's very relevant. So about how in a horror movie or in a scary storybook, the unknown is what scares you the most. When you see the masked killer coming towards you, it's not nearly as scary as when you hear something downstairs and you're like, oh, what is that? Is that a burglar? Is that just my cat? It's more scary because we don't know. So I think that's the same kind of concept to a difference to somebody with a disability, whether it be physical, mental, whatever it is. When you don't understand it and it's different, it's scary because you don't know how to maybe talk to that person. You don't know how to address them. You don't know what it is that you should be doing. And ultimately, my answer to that is ask the person. They will tell you.
And there you
go. I get that a lot with my kid. Especially, like I said, he's 15 now, and he can talk, which is great. He's verbal. Sometimes he never shuts up, but sometimes I'll have people, and teachers in the school system are kind of the worst for this, is that they'll ask me all of these questions. I'll go, great, let me ask him. And they're like, well, can't you just tell us? This is his life. These are his school courses. I'm not just going to give you an answer. I'm going to ask him. He is more than capable of telling you why he hasn't finished homework or why he wants to take one class over a different class, whatever it is. We are capable of speaking for ourselves. Same with somebody, say, in a wheelchair. If you don't know maybe what they need help with, ask them. So I used to have a part-time job working at a market, and I would just help the farmer sell the fruits and vegetables. And then there was this one guy in a wheelchair, and he would come around every Saturday. He was a very loyal customer. And so the very first time he came, though, I didn't treat him any different as any other customer, because he's not any different. And so I said, okay, what can I get you? And he told me. I said, great. Would you like it in a bag? And he said, yep. I said, great. And then he asked, can you put it on the back of my wheelchair? Yep, I could totally do that for you. Because I'm going to say we, because I'm part of the
Sure.
community of mental health and disabilities or whatever. We are very capable of telling you what it is that we need. Now, some disabilities might be more severe. If it's a developmental disability, maybe where they don't have that capacity, and then you might need to talk to the support person that's with them. But I would always talk to the person first. I don't care what their disability is, what age they are. I would talk to that person first. If then you realize that they are not capable of explaining it to you, then they would have a support person with them, and you can ask them. But they're capable.
The extrapolation of what you just said, though, is that we're afraid of the unknown because it is unknown, and we don't try to make it known. So when we're dealing with mental health, whether we're dealing with disabilities or whatever, we, as we're growing up, don't get taught to deal with it, to understand it, to communicate about it.
Yeah.
And as adults, we don't talk about it. We don't get it. We don't understand it. And as a result, we just continue to promote the same unknowns that have always been there. I think there are definitely issues with the whole concept of mental health. It is something that we need to address. There are reasons that people are as they are. We should learn to understand them. We should learn to help with them.
Yeah.
But we also should be spending a lot more time talking to people. We, being all of us, should be spending more time talking to people and learning to understand it, which is, of course, maybe in part what Unstoppable Mindset as a podcast is all about.
Exactly. And that's the nice thing about technology right now, is there are so many different podcasts out there, and a lot of them talk about, disabilities or mental health or different things like that. I have a podcast, guys. You can listen to it. It's called Ride or Die Show, mental health. But no, you're totally right. If we're not taught at a young age, and I think I was very spoiled at a young age, because the school that I went to, we had a class for kids with disabilities when they used to be. They don't have as many separate classes anymore in our school district. They try to integrate more now, which hopefully that's working the way that they want it to. I don't know. That's a different story. Anyways, but I was lucky because we had that class there. We also had a class of deaf students. And so when I was younger, I was exposed to all of that from a very early age. And I think, like you were saying, if you aren't taught about it at a young age, then you're not going to know about it as an adult. So I was spoiled that way, that I got to experience that. And I used to help out in the different classes and play with the kids there. Like, they were they were kids, right? So we all played together. So I was spoiled, but maybe that's something that as parents, we can start thinking about more to help our kids with that and to not single other kids out.
Yeah, that's, of course, part of it is that although a kid might be different or an adult may be different, there's no need to single them out. There is a need, or ought to be a need, to make sure that they are empowered to be able to contribute and be a part, which may very well mean, as you pointed out with the person who came to your market in the wheelchair, they're going to come in a wheelchair. Big deal. You do what's necessary to make it possible for that person to be involved at the store, go around the store, shop like anyone else. And when you say you don't treat them differently, the reality is, in a technical sense, yeah, you did, because you hung the bag on the back of the wheelchair. But the reality is, big deal. That's all part of making it an inclusive environment. It's not really treating someone differently. It's being inclusive.
Yes. I like the way you put that.
And that's something that we really need to do a lot more of, is learn about inclusion. Well, a couple of other things that come to mind. I'm going to save one for last, even though you just mentioned it. But tell me about you and kickboxing and all that. You have been very much in the past involved with that.
Yes. So I was kickboxing for about 10 years. Once I became an adult and my mom couldn't tell me I couldn't anymore. And in 2015, I was the Canadian national champ in my division. I've been to the World's Tournament in Ireland. I've also been to the Pan American Games. That was in Mexico, where I got a silver. And just before COVID, I was one of our Ontario coaches at our Ontario Winter Games with the kids. So I've been very involved in it. And I was thinking about taking the reffing course, but right now my body is saying no. It's kind of breaking my heart a little bit. It's been a very difficult road. But kickboxing was amazing. It's such a good outlet. It's such a good exercise. Everybody should do it if you're capable of doing it.
Tell me a little bit more about what it is exactly and how it works.
So kickboxing, you get to hit people with your hands and your feet. So there's different styles of kickboxing. So I've been training in Muay Thai, but I competed in kickboxing. And so Muay Thai it's slightly different. The rules are slightly different. There's knees, there's elbows. So I've trained, I can do those, but I've never competed with those. So I've competed in both low kick and full contact. There's also another one called light contact in K1. So the ones that I have fought in with low kick, you can kick anybody from the knees up. So the head is okay. You can never kick anybody in the back. That's not okay. But you can kick anybody from the knees up. There's no elbows and no knees in that style, but you can kick them or punch them as hard as you want. Whereas full contact, which is a little bit of a deceiving name, I feel like. So full contact, you have to kick and punch them from the waist up, and you have to kick at least 7 times around, which doesn't sound like a lot, but can be a lot depending on your style of fighting. I love kicking. Kicking is my favorite part of it, so it wasn't hard for me to kick 7 times around. But yeah, you can kick or punch them as hard as you want from the waist up in full contact. When you do K1, that's when you can also do clinch. You can do knees. It's more violent, I guess, of the styles. So
in doing that, do you think any of that contributed to the pain you have today?
It could be. We don't know what the pain is being caused by yet. There is rumors of fibromyalgia potentially. There is some osteoarthritis in my spine. So there's no definitive answer yet. I'm still doing tests. But there's a good chance that, wear and tear on the body is not, doesn't always do good things, but I'm just really tired of hearing you're too young for it.
Yeah. My wife we got married in 1982 and she pushed her own wheelchair around. She's been in a chair her whole life. But as we got into the later 1990s, it started to be more painful for her, but she kept doing it. She said, I need the exercise. I have to push myself. And that was the only answer that she would give. She didn't want to go into a power chair or anything. But in 2002, going into 2003, we had moved to California and she went to a doctor saying, look, this is hurting more and more. And he had what I think is maybe even a better answer for you. In her case, it was her shoulders that were hurting. And he said, look, your shoulders don't come with a lifetime warranty and they do wear out. And, it does. And it's different for different people. I've told that to other people in chairs since, and I've met people in their 20s and 30s who are experiencing a lot of shoulder pain. And they said, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what's probably happening. And they go off and they look at it. But the reality is you're too young is such a blanket statement that may or may not be relevant at all.
Yeah. I like what you say better.
You've also been very You've also been very active.
Yep, exactly. So I like that I don't have a lifetime warranty.
Yeah, well, that's what her doctor said, and it makes perfect sense. So she actually did transfer over into and graduate to using a power chair. And in the last 5 years, she's been diagnosed with having some arthritis in her shoulders and also some rheumatoid arthritis, which is a whole different animal. But the arthritis is there, and it's all because shoulders don't come with a lifetime warranty from God. That's all there is to it.
Wouldn't it be great if our bodies actually did, though?
Well, yeah. Always a lot to do.
Yeah, I know. But I can still go swimming, so that's good. Summertime.
Well, and you might find that there are ways to get it improved as long as you keep pushing for them to figure out what's really going on.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. I have an MRI scheduled for August. And in Ontario, we have to wait a bajillion months before we can get one. But it's coming.
Well, I think I know what really is going on, and you may not want to hear it, but Tigger is extremely unhappy that Diamond got written up and Tigger did not. So Tigger is dealing with you. Just keep that in mind.
The funniest part of you saying that is that Tigger was the kind of cat that did always give you payback. So when I was little, because we had him since I was like little, I would chase him around the house because I was, 3, 4 years old. So I'd chase him around the house and grab him and, I just love you so much, and give him all the kisses. And then at nighttime, I'd go to sleep and he'd pounce on me and try to get me because, now you're sleeping. So that is actually the kind of personality that he would have to do that.
Cats can be very strategic and they can be very patient.
Yes. So, you know what? Maybe you're right.
Yep. Tigger is definitely sending you a message.
Yeah, he would too. He would. Tell
us about your podcast. You mentioned that earlier, and I said I was going to save it and I wanted to get to it, but tell us about your podcast.
So my podcast, it's also on YouTube if you prefer watching. It is called the Write or Die Show. So write like you're writing something. I'm an author. And I interview other authors and we talk about mental health.
Ah. Tell us about maybe some of your episodes. I'm curious to learn more about it.
Sure. Yeah. So I have tons of different episodes. So what I do, at least on the YouTube channel, is on YouTube, you're able to make playlists of them. So I've playlisted all of the different mental health discussions into their categories. So I've had people on that talk about depression. That's probably the biggest one. So depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar. I've had eating disorders on the show. And I've also talked to people about autism, not that it's a mental health disorder, but because it's close to my heart. So people can still come on and talk about that one. But yeah, so just a wide variety of different topics and a wide variety of amazing authors. I love talking to the other self-published authors. Not that you have to be self-published. I've also had other authors that weren't, that were with like actual publishers. And I say author, but it's really anybody who writes. I've even had somebody who's written screenplays come on the show. So he's never written a book, but he wrote screenplays. So anybody who's written anything, songwriters, I've had some songwriters come on. So just a lot of fun to talk about it. And it's all about personal experience. So everybody on the show is talking from their own personal experience, because I think, and this was my answer about how we ended the stigma, right? We talk about it. So I have over 100 episodes now. So by over 100 people talking about their different experiences and their different coping strategies, we can open up that line of communication with others that don't understand it, like we're talking about, and try to get them to understand these different things, get them to understand that, somebody with schizophrenia is just a person, that somebody with bipolar is just a person, and kind of shed light on that. And also I like when they share their coping strategy, because I take little bits from other people and try them out. And hopefully the audience is taking little bits from everybody and trying it out, because not every coping strategy works for every person, but there's tons of them out there.
How do you find your guests?
So when I first started the show, I put out a call to, what's that thing? radioguestlist.com. And I put it out there. I got 80 responses, like almost immediately, which was insane to me, because I was like, how am I going to find guests? And then I didn't really need to look hard. And once kind of that got going, I've met some really good people that help. So actually, the publicist that I just signed on with Creative Edge, I have a deal with him. I always tell him, hey, these slots are open. What authors do you have? Because he always has very good, high quality guests come on the show. So it's been really easy now to actually find people, which I was surprised, because I thought I was going to have trouble with it.
Everyone has a story to tell. And sometimes it's hard to get people to tell stories, but everyone does have a story to tell. And it's great to be able to have the opportunity to get people to come on and tell their stories. And I'm sure that's what you're encountering as well. Yes,
exactly. And most people who have written things, most of us authors struggle with self-publicity and marketing. Like it's one of the hardest things. And so you go on lots of different podcasts to tell different audiences about you. So by interviewing authors, I think that has really helped, because first off, they're storytellers. Even if, like I said, songwriters, whatever, writers are storytellers, and then they need to market out their product to people. So it kind of worked out well.
Right. Well, this has been fun, and I want to thank you very much for being a guest on our podcast. I appreciate it. And I know we met each other through the same publicist, which is really cool. But tell me, how can people get in touch with you if they'd like to reach out, if they'd like to learn more about what you're doing or ask you questions and connect? How do they do that?
Sure. So my website is rbwriting.ca. I'm also on Facebook at RB Writing, and then of course my YouTube
That's show. The letter R and the letter B?
Yes, for my name, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh.
So RB Writing.
Yep. And .ca, because I'm in Canada. And then Facebook I'm on. Instagram I'm on. Instagram, though, it's Randi B Writing, because somebody already had RB. So Randi B Writing, that's Randi with an I. And TikTok, I am on TikTok at The Write or Die Show.
Cool. So to say your website once more.
rbwriting.ca.
.ca. Great. Well, I've enjoyed it and learned a lot, and I really appreciate you coming on today and talking with us. And I hope that everyone listening appreciates and maybe has a little bit more understanding about some of the topics that you've discussed.
I hope so too. And I had so much fun.
Well, and we definitely would love to have you come back as you're getting more books and tell us about the books. And let me know when you publish about Tigger, because I'm sure the pain's going to go away then.
I will definitely do that. And you know what? Maybe I'll call it About Tigger.
There you go. Well, thanks very much, Randy. And I want to thank all of you, wherever you are, for listening today. I'd love to hear from you and get your comments. So please feel free to email me at michaelhi@accessibe.com or visit michaelhingson.com/podcast, where you can visit more episodes, although you can get them wherever podcast episodes are available. And as always, sure would appreciate a 5-star rating from you to help us. We appreciate when you make comments and rate the program and rate the podcast. So please do that. And again, Randy, one last time, thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it very much.
Thanks.
You take care.